There's an appliance sitting in almost every kitchen that we've been using wrong for decades. And it's not the one you'd guess. It's the freezer. Somewhere along the way, most of us turned it into a graveyard, a place where good intentions go in to die, one forgotten bag at a time, buried a little deeper every week under a slowly growing wall of frost. Walk into an average home in Japan, though, and you'll find something different. A freezer that's often a third of the size of the one in a typical Western kitchen, doing 3 times the work, and somehow wasting almost nothing. This isn't a story about a better appliance. It's about 9 habits that nobody ever actually sat down and taught you. And one of them, habit 8, is going to make you rethink something you probably assume is just basic kitchen science. That freezing always makes food a little worse than it started. It doesn't. Not always. Not even close. We'll get there. Here are the 9 Japanese freezer habits that actually work, starting with the one that quietly decides how well every other habit on this list performs. Habit 1. Freeze it the day you buy it, not the day before it would have gone bad. Most of us treat the freezer as a last resort. The chicken goes in once it's a day from turning. The spinach goes in once it's already wilting at the edges. By the time you finally decide something needs freezing, most of what you were trying to save is already gone. The flavor's fading, the texture's softening, the clock was running long before you did anything about it. In Japan, the timing flips. Freezing happens on the day the groceries come home, while everything is still at its absolute best. Meat gets trimmed and divided into the portions you'll actually cook. Fish gets cleaned and prepped. Vegetables get washed and cut down while they're still crisp. The freezer isn't where food goes to be rescued. It's where food goes while it's still winning. So the next time you unpack groceries, freeze anything you won't touch in the next 2 days immediately. Not next week, not once it starts looking iffy. Today, at its best. Habit 2. Freeze it flat and freeze it fast. Here's something that sounds too small to matter, but changes everything about how frozen food tastes later. Speed. When food freezes slowly, the water inside it has time to form large, jagged ice crystals, and those crystals tear straight through the cell walls of meat and vegetables from the inside. That's the real reason thawed food sometimes comes out dry and a little sad. It was never the freezer's fault. It was how slowly the food froze in the first place. The fix is almost stupidly simple. Press food flat and thin before it goes in, ideally straight onto a metal tray instead of stacked in a thick container. Thin shapes freeze all the way through in minutes instead of hours before those crystals ever get a chance to grow. As a bonus, flat food takes up a fraction of the space and thaws in a fraction of the time, since there's no dense frozen core sitting in the middle. Tonight, before anything goes in, flatten it. A rolling pin over a sealed bag takes 10 seconds and changes the texture of everything you pull back out months from now. Habit 3. Label everything every single time. This is the one almost everyone thinks they're already doing, and almost nobody actually does consistently. You tell yourself you'll remember what's in the bag. You're mid-cleanup, you're tired, and writing 2 words feels like an extra step you don't have energy for, so it goes in blank. 6 weeks later, it's an unidentified object taking up shelf space, and you keep sliding it further back to make room for things you can actually recognize. In a Japanese kitchen, this step happens before the bag is even sealed, not after. Contents and date every time, no exceptions. 2 pieces of information, maybe 15 seconds, and it's the one habit that makes every other habit on this list actually work. Because you can't rotate. Plan around or use food you can't identify. Put tape and a marker directly beside your freezer tonight, not in a drawer across the kitchen. Contents and date. Before anything goes in, always. Habit 4, first in, first out. This is the rule every professional kitchen runs on, and almost no home kitchen actually follows. It's simple enough to teach a child. When something new goes in, whatever's older moves to the front. You always use what's been there longest first. In most home freezers, the opposite happens completely by accident. New things land wherever there's an open gap, which is usually right at the front, since that's the easiest spot to reach. Older items get pushed back a little further every time, quietly aging behind everything that arrived after them, until one day you dig to the very back and pull out something wrapped in so much frost you genuinely can't identify it. That's not bad luck. That's just a system with no rotation. Every time you put something new away, take 5 extra seconds to slide the older matching item forward first. That's the entire rule, forever. Habit 5, portion into single servings from the start. This is the one that trips up almost everyone, usually without them ever noticing. You make a full pot of soup, let it cool, and pour the whole thing into one large container before freezing it as one solid block. That container feeds 4. Tonight, it's just you and one other person. So 3 weeks later, you're defrosting an entire family-sized block for one bowl, which means you either refreeze what's left, quietly degrading it, or you throw the rest away. This happens in nearly every kitchen that batch cooks, and it's not because the cooking was wrong. It's because the storage decision got made in a tired, convenient moment instead of around how the food would actually get eaten later. In Japan, portioning happens before the food ever touches the freezer, built into the cooking itself rather than tacked on afterward. A pot of soup isn't one container to fill. It's 6 individual portions waiting to be labeled and stored separately. Next time you batch cook anything, portion it into single servings before it freezes. Bags laid flat, 1 serving each. It costs you 30 extra seconds tonight and saves you from binning a meal and a half every time you cook in bulk. 5 down, 4 to go, and this is where things stop being about damage control and start getting genuinely interesting. Because the last few habits aren't just about wasting less anymore. They're about frozen food performing better than it has any right to. Habit 6, freeze meal bases, not just leftovers. This one's less a technique and more a shift in what you even think the freezer is for. Most freezers are full of the past. Half a dish from last week, the end of something you've already eaten 3 times, a takeout container you meant to finish and didn't. It's all food you've already made and have already grown a little tired of, so every time you open the door, it's a quiet little reminder of things you meant to eat and never did. A Japanese freezer tends to be full of beginnings instead. Dashi stock, ready to become soup tonight. A curry base, half-built, portions of sauce, seasoned meat that only needs a hot pan. None of it is a leftover. Every piece of it is a component, a head start on a meal that hasn't happened yet. Opening a freezer full of beginnings doesn't feel like guilt. It feels like a favor your past self did for you. Next time you make a sauce, a stock, or a marinade, double the batch on purpose and freeze half, not as a leftover, as a head start on next week. Habit 7, blanch vegetables before you freeze them. This is the step almost every home cook skips entirely, not out of laziness, just because nobody ever explained why it matters. Vegetables carry enzymes that stay active even at freezer temperatures. Cold slows them down, but it doesn't switch them off. And they spend the whole time quietly breaking down color, flavor, and nutrients, while the vegetable sits there looking perfectly fine through the bag. Blanching, a fast dunk in boiling water, then straight into ice water to stop the cooking, permanently shuts those enzymes down. A blanched vegetable, frozen today, tastes close to identical 6 months out. An unblanched one starts losing quality almost immediately. It costs about 5 minutes total. Next time you're freezing anything green, spinach, green beans, broccoli, blanch it first. Boiling water, ice bath, dry it off, freeze flat. 5 minutes now, and you'll taste the difference the day you finally use it. Habit 8 is the twist I promised, and it's about buying in season and freezing right at the peak. Seasonal produce hits a short window where it's both cheapest and best at the exact same time. Berries in high summer, corn at its peak, fish when it's running. Buy extra right in that window and freeze it properly, and you're eating July's produce in the middle of January at July's prices. But here's the part that actually rewrites what you think you know about freezing. Rice is the clearest example, and it's almost nobody's first guess. If you cook a big batch of rice and refrigerate the leftovers, it goes hard and stale within a couple of days. That's a starch process called retrogradation, and it happens fast at fridge temperature. But if you freeze that same rice right after cooking in individual portions, that process barely happens at all. Reheat it straight from frozen in a microwave a month later, and it comes out closer to fresh cooked than anything you'd get from the fridge ever could. The freezer isn't the compromise here. The fridge is. Ginger works on a similar logic. Fresh ginger in the crisper drawer starts drying out and going soft within a couple of weeks. Frozen whole, it keeps its punch for months, and you can grate it straight from frozen, skin and all, without ever thawing it first. 2 completely ordinary ingredients, both quietly better off in the freezer than anywhere else in your kitchen. Next time you cook a big batch of rice, portion and freeze it the same day instead of refrigerating the extra. And keep a knob of ginger permanently living in your freezer instead of your fridge. And that brings us to habit 9, the one that quietly holds every other one in place. Never freeze more than you'll actually eat. It sounds like the opposite of everything I've just told you, and that's exactly the point. The goal was never to store as much as physically possible. The goal is that everything you buy actually gets used. A freezer packed to the door with forgotten food isn't organized. It's waste, just wearing the costume of preparation. There's a word for this in Japanese, Mottainai. It doesn't translate cleanly. The closest English gets is something like, what a waste. But that undersells it. It's less about guilt and more about respect. The sense that when something still has value left in it, throwing it away disregards everything that went into it before it ever reached your freezer. The work, the season, the person who grew it or caught it or made it. Using something up completely isn't frugality in this framing. It's just paying attention to what you were actually given. 9 habits is a lot to hold in your head all at once, so don't try to install all of them by Friday. Think back over this list and notice which one made you wince a little while you were listening. That's usually the one you actually need. Start there. Label what's already sitting in your freezer right now, or pull the oldest thing forward and put it on this week's menu. Everything else can wait. Your freezer was never too small, and none of this was ever really about willpower. It just needed a system where forgetting wasn't an option anymore. Tell me in the comments which of these 9 you're starting with and what you actually found when you went and checked your own freezer just now. If any of this changed how you're going to look at that door, subscribe, and pass it along to the one person you know who's currently avoiding a freezer full of things they can't quite identify. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.